Hello everyone, my name is Matt Scorpion, and welcome back to Destiny 2 for the Dawning. Now, apologies I didn't get to this as soon as I could. I honestly procrastinated just a little bit too much and wasn't in time to come out yesterday. But aside from that, it's time to go through the game as usual. Now, the game, Bungie, words. Destiny will start out by giving you a starter quest from a Levante, and at that point, it is very cookie cutter, joke implemented, and pretty much you'll just run a cookie over to Zavala, claim it, get a gift, open it, and then from that point, it is off to the main quest, which is basically just going about and delivering a bunch of random cookies to a bunch of random characters throughout the game of Destiny. The first one being the cookie for Failsafe, then for Saint 14, as well as Banshee 44. Now, I imagine, I haven't done this, of course, as you can see right there, it'll just go through the variety of other characters. If it gets any more complicated than that, it probably will just be numbers of cookies as opposed to specific cookies, but I'll get more into the full detail. Now, an important note, there is two things to do in case you are a returning player if you have access to them, and that is to equip two things. First being the Starfarer 7M. This is a special ship because basically, just by playing the Dawning, it improves Dawning by giving you the Dawning Spirit currency, which is quite required for almost everything else throughout the Dawning. So go ahead and just pick them up. This is nothing but a benefit just for a different cosmetic for a while. Same thing going for the Sparrow that is Dawning. It does have a bit of a buff, although at that point it just drops some extra glimmer. So if you want to give some extra glimmer about the worlds as you transfer about, that one's not as required, but it is limited time. But aside from that as well, getting into the thing, now the basic cycle, if you don't know, for the Dawning, is basically going throughout a bunch of events and doing cookies for them. So the base rotation is thus. You have your first ingredient, which is what you've killed, of course being Vex, Fallen, Cabal, Hive, Taken, or Scorn, and then you have the how, which is basically blowing them up, sharpening them with a sword, solar, arc, void, and just orbs of power. Then you have personal touch for melee abilities, as well as perfect taste for precision damage, bullet spray for anything fully automatic, well, actual fully automatic, finishing touch for finishers, balanced flavors for bows, snipers, scouts, and pulse rifles, multifaceted for rapidly defeating targets, superb for super ability, and one last one, dark frosting for stasis damage. Surprised I didn't add one for strand, honestly, but regardless, the full recipe book will be filled out if you've done it in the past. If you haven't, you're probably going to have to go through the full thing. So I will just mouse over every cookie for every person, which is Zavala, Ikora Ray, Banshee, Hawthorne, Devrim K, Failsafe, Shax, then the Varix, Eris Morn on the Moon, Ada 1, Saint 14, Zur when he's about, although I do believe you can also visit him in the Eternity Zone. Then Ill Fortune Cookies, which is Petrovenge, Dark Chocolate Milk, which is Drifter. Then you have Blueberry Crumblers for Shawhan, Bittersweet Biscotti, which is Hawthorne. Then you also have Bright Dust and Snowballs for Tess Everest, Butter Cookies for Ava Levante, Stalwart Thin for the Actual Stranger, and Lucent Crunch for Finch in the Throne World. That is all of the cookies that are available, and I moused over just so you could see what goes into them in case you needed a quick recipe guide. Now, the basic, of course, 1, 2 is you get the green element from what you killed, the blue element for how you killed, and the last bit is the Essence of Dawning. This is basically the same thing as the pages from Festival of the Lost, or the variety of other things. It's basically just completing events. By far the best farm I've seen with a team, now let me specify with a team, maybe even without, depending if you can solo it pretty regularly, although a checkpoint will be hard, is going to the Dreaming City in the Shattered Throne and actually doing the final boss duel in Karu checkpoint. That will give you a minimum of at least 20 essence for every kill. It can be done, and the actual act can be done in like 30 seconds to a minute if you do it quickly. And to that point, you can farm out a lot of essence. That's the main thing that most people need. From that point, then you just go out into the world, find what you need from various enemies, which if you ignore doing cookies for a while, you will build up a massive stockpile of them. But regardless, you fill out cookies, and it is actually quite worth it to do the masterwork, which is basically crafting every cookie right off the bat, because at that point, then everything becomes cheaper. You need less Essence of Dawning, or actually specifically, you just need less Essence of Dawning. I believe it cuts it to 10 required as opposed to 15. Although my numbers could be off. That was based on just last year. But aside from that, that is the full rotation of everything. Now, there is a second bit right off the bat, and that is how to get the memento. Now, that will be a separate quest that's dropped a little bit after completing the intro, which is the Winter Night quest. It is only a 2-part quest, so it's quick, and you need to kill things with snowballs, as well as things with upgraded snowballs, requiring a little bit of extra dawning essence, so you might have to do a bit of dawning stuff before getting it. Basically, take any of these upgrades, and you will get that bit done. But once you finish that, as well as just, giving Ava Levante a classic butter cookie, you'll be rewarded with your first dawning memento, which at that point will actually reward you with the first gift in return, with the first memento, the rest that can be earned with gifts in return. Literally, I'm not exaggerating when I say this. Turning in the gifts in return will reward a memento after so long. It's a random drop. It's hard to see. But at the same time, save up on these if you're hunting for specifically the memento. Now, getting into the main dawning as it's developed, of course, there is a few things that were added. In terms of weaponry, we have a first being the Albedo Wing, a arc aggressive frame glaive, which is the second of its kind ever, and it does come with a new dawning surprise origin trait, which I say new, but this has already existed for at least a year. But basically, it is something specific for the dawning. I believe the gift is just a random ingredients drop. It's hard to say whether or not this is going to stack up to anything, though. It does look interesting, but I don't know the perk combinations. But then going backwards for the rest of the weapons, we have Stay Frosty, a stasis lightweight frame pulse rifle, Avalanche, a solar adaptive frame machine gun, Cold Front, which should have been Stasis just based on the name, an aggressive frame kinetic SMG, as well as Glacial Chasm, a high-impact void fusion rifle, and Zephyr, a stasis sword, which this is actually quite nifty because of a unique perk called Cold Steel, only available in this one so far, which is basically just slowing things on target hit. Very good for a random stasis build if you need slow in it. But aside from that, that is going to be dropping here and there from a variety of gifts in return, as well as challenges, which for the seal, the challenges are as follows. So you have the intro, Ice Cold Combat, which is basically killing things with snowballs. That'll grant you the Albedo Wing, as well as a variety of stuff. Then we also have Amateur and Bake Extravaganza, basically just cooking a mass amount of cookies, which doesn't have to be all over the place. You can make 50 of the same one over and over again, in case you just like an NPC that much. And we also have Shopping Spree for buying all the upgrades from Ava Levante, which I imagine go to the oven as well as the snowballs, which is all of the upgrades you can see here, which just improves a variety of stuffs in terms of rewards or snowballs. Then, getting on with it, we have Deep Freeze for defeating combatants or guardians with stasis weapons, Adept Baker, which is baking each of the dawning cookies for a variety of people, and then as well each of the individuals part 2, which again, I would recommend doing this as soon as possible. Like, ignore all the bounties, just do one cookie for everyone. That'll just make life easier for grinding out this event. Then you also have Yarn Maker for defeating combatants with Strand, as well as Solar, and then Arc as well as, and Void. So they actually cover all of the rainbow here. And then you also have Vanguard Eternity for completing Vanguard Ops or Dares of Eternity, as well as Snowstruck for spawning snowballs by defeating combatants with weapons or abilities and valid activities, Competitive Spirit for completing everything that involves PvP, that is the absolute worst, and Star Baker, which at the end is the thing that gives you the, of course, title. And from that point as well, in case you already had the title or are curious, here is the requirements for gilding Star Baker. Basically, giving dawning gifts to vendors, 100 total, which is 100 cookies delivered in total. And Cheerful Destruction, defeating combatants with dawning weapons. And it is plural. You can use any of them. So you can put Glacial Chasm, Cold Front, and the Zephyr Sword or Avalanche Machine Gun, and just use them in your day-to-day and eventually get that done. Frozen Doom for defeating combatants with snowballs, also easy. And then spend Dawning Spirit, which is probably going to be the hardest one, just because as much as the upgrades will take some time, I'm not sure if this finishes it off or if there's anything else that can be bought, I think. Okay, focusing is a way you can do that. So you can just focus a weapon over and over again in the end if you just need a Dawning Spirit purchase thing. And as well, speaking of bounties, I'd recommend doing these just because they reward essence as well as spirit, which, especially the weekly ones, in terms of present, that's 4 free cookies. It will be 60 free cookies once you masterwork it. But, I just recommend doing bounties as you can because that is just a free additional thing. Now, that has been pretty much everything that is new with the Dawning. Of course, there is cosmetics. I already went over that in a separate video, and a variety of other things, but that is pretty much the whole loop. You just make cookies, initially make one for every vendor you can, regardless of whether or not you hate them, and then after that, it is snowball game. If you have a really easy cookie, or you have, like, the Dolan Carter checkpoint going over and over again, you're getting all of these superb ones, as well as taking butter. If that is a recipe done, just keep making that cookie over and over again, visit an NPC, offload it, and I will actually warn right off the bat too, make sure you have some inventory space, because in the process of just trying to make this video, I had to burn all my enhancement prisms, as well as one of my backup glimmer sources, which I think was dark fragments this time around, but I had to make for some room. So actually have some space available when you're doing this. With that, my name is Matt Scorpion, and I will see you in the next video.